As I mentioned just a little while ago, the Haftarah this week, which is normally paired with Parshat Pinchas, is the story of Elijah the prophet, who after publicly defeating the prophets of Baal is now forced to run and hide from Ahav, the king of Israel, and Jezebel, his queen. He flees into the wilderness, guided by an angel, and there he arrives at God's holy mountain. And there God appears to Elijah, famously first in the form of a windstorm, and then in an earthquake, then in a flame, all of which do not contain the true essence of God, before finally appearing as the Kol Dimama Daka, the still, small voice. This is perhaps one of the most important sections of our Tanakh to me, personally, as a rabbi. In my first year of rabbinical school, it was the subject of my very first formal sermon, where I explored the connections between Sinai for Elijah and Sinai for Moses. And then, as now, I taught that this is actually a pivotal moment for God and the Jewish people, because it is the moment that God stops providing supernatural miracles to the Israelites. There's no more split seas, no more fire from heaven, no more resurrection of the dead, no more pillars of salt. And now God never says aloud why these very flashy miracles go away. But I would argue that it's because as much as people want to believe that they would, supernatural miracles never seem much to change the way that people live. There's an old joke about a man whose car breaks down on the side of a rural road right at the edge of night. He looks up to heaven and says, "God, if my car starts and I get home, you'll see me at synagogue every single Shabbat." And he turns the key, the ignition rumbles to life, and he grins, "Never mind, it's fixed." The Israelites are a fine case for this. It is, after all, they who see the thunder. They observe the infinite quintessence of God that descends into the finite space of Sinai. They are the ones who eat the manna. They experience liberation and walk through on the dry land. And they are also the generation that overwhelmingly lacks belief and lacks commitment and lacks faith. Despite the overwhelming supernatural power that God displays, they always seem to think that there will be a lack, that there will be an end to the generosity. They cannot seemingly get away from the suspicion that God's largesse will just suddenly vanish and be taken away from them. My great aunt, Sally, survived the Great Depression in the United States of America. It was her job as the eldest child and the only one born in the old country to care for and provide for her family, especially her two younger brothers, Sam, and my grandfather, Phil. Her youth was full of hardship and loss, always lacking, always looking for a few more dollars or another slice of bread or a safe, stable home. And in my late and early teens, I would visit her often because she lived in the same apartment division, which is, by the way, Peter Cooper Village, of those of you who want to play New York City geography with me, as my maternal grandparents. We would walk over to Sally's and check in, get a fresh-baked chocolate chip cookie, and I would walk out with pinched cheeks and a few extra dollars in my pocket she always gave me with a wink and a nod. And as she grew older, I visited her at the assisted living home, and she would motion to me to open up that drawer over there where she had hidden away treasures that she only shared with the people that she loved, though to be fair, it was a very long list. They were her one-day treasures. They were her just-in-case treasures. They were packets of unopened saltines, a few extra dollars rolled up tight with blue rubber bands, a cookie from the dinner the week before, and peppermints in cellophane. They were the common things that had not been common once. They were the common things that she feared would soon never be common again. The Israelites cannot get over their youth. They cannot get over their suffering, their enslavement. And in the desert, they will never get over the fear that they will be returned to slavery. And some even go so far as to crave its familiarity. And it does not matter how many miracles they receive. And my great aunt, who lived the American dream, who lived the American story, and who received the American miracle, she could never get over it either. In the story of Elijah, the Israelites of his era also remain unfazed by miracle, unchanged by supernatural demonstration of God's power. At Carmel, Elijah calls forth fire from heaven, and it comes. And the Israelites are suddenly filled with frenzied, zealous devotion, but it's a devotion which fades just as quickly as the embers do on the altar. Within a chapter, the Israelites have forgotten about the fire, and Elijah has gone from victory to fleeing for his life. He too is saved by an angel and then stands on the mountain where Moses stood. He encounters the wind, he encounters the fire, the earthquake, the still small voice, and he too is unchanged. He too is untransformed. Twice God asks him for his purpose, for his identity, once before the revelation and once after. And both times he is unmoved and responds with the exact same words, "I am most zealous for God." Miracles do not move the masses for very long. They bring no transformation into the society. They barely even seem to faze the prophet who calls them forth. And so it seems to me that God tries now a different tactic when it comes to miracles. In my second year of rabbinical school, I met my wife Taylor. And after a few months of dating, she asked me, "Come visit me in Montreal, and while you're there, maybe teach at the shul. It'll be Shavuot." And Rabbi Lisa Grushko of Temple Emmanuel Besholem generously offered me a spot in the all-night learning, the Tikkun Leil. And I found myself, once again, speaking about Elijah and Moses and Sinai. And little did I know that I was about to receive a miracle of my own that night. Because the way Taylor tells that story, that was the moment, watching me teach late into the night, that she decided that she loved me. One of the unspoken marvels of the modern age is that digital documents are static, frozen in time. They are capsules of the past that we can visit today. And so I opened my source sheet from that night while preparing these works, and I was stunned. It was all straightforward, simple text. Not a single commentator, not a single source, not a single quote from Talmud in sight, which if those of you who study with me on Saturday mornings and Wednesday afternoons know, is not really who I am anymore. I'm reminded that one of the magical pieces, the miraculous pieces about Torah, is that while it is static, it is also different every single time we approach it. And the me who approached it in May of 2015 is not the me who approached it the year before in Jerusalem, and nor is it the me who stands before you this morning, because Torah is God's way of transforming us now, instead of miracles. Torah has the power to be transformational in a way that it seems to me miracles are not. A miracle happens, and it's like a stone thrown into a pond. Ripples spread out, but soon enough the water becomes calm and serene once again. We might remember how big the splash was. We might appreciate the memory it created, but it is over, and the miracle has passed through. But Torah is like regularly paddling through the waters of a great river as it endlessly pours and pools and flows. You might become familiar with it. You might anticipate its turn or its drop, its high and its low. but it will never fail to surprise you. The river does not change, except, of course, that it changes every moment of every day. The Torah does not change, except it does in every moment of every life. Last summer, Shavuot, again, and I was asked to teach again at another all-night study, this time in Atlanta. But the world had changed. The Trump years had come and gone, and COVID was still sweeping through. Rabbinical school was over, and summer was here, and the work still felt like it had just begun. And I had become a father, another miracle of my very own. And still Elijah encounters God on the mountain. The Kol Damama Daka cries out, and the miracles were still something I was trying to work through. And I returned to these very texts. In opening a Hasidic text, I find a teaching about Hanukkah that I never realized I really needed on Shavuot. The Hasidic master teaches that God offers 3 kinds of miracles to go with the 3 stages of the day and the 3 holidays of redemption: Passover, Purim, and Hanukkah. Daytime, twilight, and night. Daytime miracles, says the rabbi, are the ones that have ceased. They are the miracles of Passover, the supernatural display of God's power that overturn the natural order of the world, and everyone can see them, even when you're not looking, because that's what daylight is. And nighttime miracles are the miracles of Purim, he continues. They are the ones that could be fate or chance or just good luck. Mordecai at the right place at the right time. Esther, who finds her voice and her courage and her power. The king, who has a moment of lucidity and a moment of kindness. And even Haman, who builds up a gallows and saves us the trouble. If you're looking in the right place, you find God in those moments. And if you lack the ability, if you lack the faith, you'll never even see the moment. But twilight miracles, says the rabbi, these are the miracles of Hanukkah. A twilight miracle is the one which a human being begins, and God puts on the finishing touches. The Maccabees revolt against the Greeks, and God gives them the strength to fight on, despite overwhelming odds. Matisyahu and his sons purify the temple, and God makes the oil burn longer than it should. And that is the meaning of the prayer that we offer on Hanukkah, Al Hanisim, when we say, thank you, God, who did miracles for our ancestors in their day and for us in ours. It's a good teaching. I teach the course into the Zoom room at 11 p.m. with my infant daughter sleeping one room over, all the while wishing that we were in person and thinking fondly of the night in Montreal. And I'm happy at that moment to have revisited this old teaching and to have found something new in it, because there's a good lesson here, but I'm still missing it. And I don't know what it is, like a word that you've forgotten but stays ever on the tip of your tongue. And it took me coming back to these texts once again this week, at this stage in my life, to pick up on that last little insight that I'm finally ready to accept on this turn around the river, which is that I think I'm wrong. I think I'm wrong. I think miracles do change our lives, but not the big flashy ones. And that this is what God is trying to teach Elijah on the mountain. That this is what the Kiddushat Levi is calling the twilight miracles, is actually the voice of the Kol Damama Daka, the miracle of the still small voice. What we begin and what God completes for us beyond our wildest dreams. These are the miracles that we find today. These are the miracles which change our lives. These are the ones which work the best, because they are the ones that we have a hand in ourselves. I will say this, and I know some of you already know it, that Holy Blossom Temple is a place where we work miracles. Because this is a place where people create transformational change in their lives, in other people's lives, in their studies, in their souls. This is a place where we create, and where we form, and where we dream. And when we dream, we always seem to be able to lift those dreams up higher and farther than we ever expected on our own merits. And I feel like if you look closely, you'll see God in those moments, here in this building and here in this community. And I'll also say this on our Shabbat morning together, having served you now for exactly 1 month as a rabbi, that it feels awesome to be here at this time, as part of this team, as part of this community. Because to me, to be a rabbi of Holy Blossom Temple is a miracle. And yes, I did have a hand in it, but that doesn't make it any less for me an act of God. So thank you to you, our community, our friends, our guests, and Shabbat Shalom.